Hi everyone, it's Christine here with Ever After Paper Crafts, and today I have a fun card to share with you. If you've watched any of my videos, you know how much I absolutely love to do some scene building with my cards. And so this is the biggest scene to date I've probably created, but it looks difficult and complex, but it's actually really easy, and I want to share with you how I did it today. I'm going to pull the card up so you can really see some of the details. We're going to work today on how I created that background back here. You can see there's some spray mist back here, as well as some distressing and some of that water reactivating with the distress oxide inks. You can see I've created some mountains with some glitter snowbanks on top. And then of course the little tree line here and the snowbanks, and then obviously all of these adorable little elements that make the card. There's the Yeti in the middle, and for once my glitter is really showing up in this card on the video. I totally glittered the heck out of that Yeti with lots of Wink of Stella glitter pen. So there's him, and then a whole bunch of all of the adorable elements that make up this little village. I also used some of these absolutely beautiful gems. These are from Lucy's cards, and they are called Jewels Ice Cube Mix, and I wanted to show these to you before I forgot because I am absolutely thrilled with them. They go on just like sequins, and they pick up a little bit of the underlying color that you're laying them on top of, and they really just kind of sparkle as well. They're really pretty. So anyway, here's the front of the card, and then on the inside I have my greeting, and it says, "Yeti or not, here comes Christmas," and I stamped a little heart that I colored with Copics as well. So let's go ahead and get started. This may be a little bit of a long video, so I apologize in advance, but I kind of want to go over how I planned the card, and then from there do a little bit of the background, and then show you how to watercolor some of these really cute little images. Even though these are tiny images, some of them are anyway, I watercolored everything you see here in terms of the images. And it's very doable even when you're dealing with small images. So I kind of wanted to show you a couple examples of how I did that as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to start with kind of showing you, well, first, since it's right here, let me show you the stamp sets that I used. I used the Me and My Yeti stamp set from Mama Elephant, which is a brand new release, and it is absolutely adorable. And this is, of course, where the Yeti and all of the elements to create the cute little village come from. For the sentiment inside the card, as well as for the banner that the Yeti is holding of stars, I used sentiments from a Yeti. And that's where it says here is the Yeti or not, here comes Christmas sentiment. And then you have two different banners that you could put in his arms. And in the open flag banner, you could put Merry or Peace or snowflakes or hearts or stars. You could fill those banners with whatever you want. I chose to use the stars for this card. And then of course there are coordinating dies to cut that banner out. So that was used for that. All right, so like I was saying, I kind of wanted to go over how I planned the layout of the card first. So what I did is I knew this was going to be a complex, kind of large scene. It was going to take up the full entirety of an A2 size card, which of course is 5.5 by 4 1/4. So I just grabbed a die. I'm not using this die on the project, but this is just a stitched regular rectangle die, but it happens to be A2 size. It's 5.5 by 4 1/4. So I kind of set it down on my workstation, and I kind of had the layout planned in my head slightly. I knew I wanted to use the Lawn Fawn stitched mountain borders, so I pulled those out, and I kind of put the little mountain here. I knew I wanted to use the Lawn Fawn forest border die because I had the idea of having this sort of tree line at the base of the mountains. So I laid that down, and then I thought, well, I need a little bit of extra stuff in the front of the card here. So I used the Lawn Fawn stitched hillside borders, and I laid the two out that I used up here, and they're just the simple ones that kind of go a slight little curve on each side. And I laid it out like that, and that's how I came up with the general layout, and I knew the Yeti was going to go in the middle. So what I did then is I just stamped all of the elements that I knew I wanted on the card from the little stamp set onto some watercolor paper, went crazy coloring, cut them all out, and then just played around to position all of that. But because once I had this main layout done, it was pretty easy to stick all of the other elements wherever I desired. So it wasn't really complicated at all. I've cut these out for you just to kind of show you what it all looked like cut out before placed on a card. So let me just quickly put these away so they don't get lost. All right, and then like I said, I cut these out, and some of them I inked on, so we'll work on that, and then we'll work on the background here. Okay, so here's kind of what it looks like cut out. Here's a 5.5 by 4.25 background, which we are going to be inking here in just a moment. Then I have my hilltop mountains, which kind of, you know, are going to go there-ish. Then I have my little tree line that's going to go kind of at the base of the mountains there. And then what's great about the borders, the hills, is it doesn't matter what this tree line looks like from here down, because it matches perfectly with the Lawn Fawn stitched hillside. So I'm just going to glue that right on top, and you won't see what's below the tree line. So this is in essence what it looks like with all of the pieces cut out. And then of course you'd have the tops of your mountains as well, which come in the same die set. And I just cut that out of some white glitter paper. I didn't cut them all out again, but I just kind of wanted to show you a rough kind of version of what that looked like. So, and the reason I'm showing you this is because sometimes cards like this can look so daunting and so intricate and time consuming, and they're really not. If you just kind of have a basic idea of what you want to do and you have some dies, just lay it out, cut it out, and then, you know, you're good to go. This really took no time at all. All right, so let's go ahead now then and start with the inking of this background, which is going to be this blue background behind all of the scenery. All right, so I used 2 different Distress Oxide inks to ink this background. I used Faded Jeans and I used Salty Ocean. And of course we would only need to ink about 2/3 of the way down because we have all of this scene building on top. But for me, it's just easier to go ahead and ink the whole thing. So that's what I did. But if you would prefer, you can certainly just ink, you know, 2/3 of it or something like that. So I'm just going to put all of my Salty Ocean down first, and I'm doing this on Canson XL watercolor paper because I'm going to be adding water, and I'm also going to be adding some shimmer spritz to the very tippy top of this blue scene here to make it really sparkly. So here we go. I'm just laying down, coating the entire thing with the Salty Ocean. Now I'm going to come in with the Faded Jeans, and again, these are Distress Oxide inks. The Distress inks work great as well. It's just really whatever your preference is. I will always reach for the Distress Oxide inks if the color exists in the oxides, simply because I find them to be so incredibly forgiving and so easy to blend. But the Distress inks work great too. All right, so now I'm going to come in with the Faded Jeans and just go kind of around the perimeter, like so. And I'm not worried about the blending yet. You can see I still have the foam pad, you know, little markings are on here. We're going to fix that in just a minute. So don't really worry too much about that when you're initially laying the color down. I just want to get this color down onto the paper. Now I'm going to come back in with the Salty Ocean, and here's where I'm going to do the blending to really make this look pretty and iron out those applicator lines that come from the blending tool. All right, this is actually looking really pretty. Didn't have to blend it too much. That's what I mean with these oxide inks. You really don't have to put a lot of work into it. They just blend effortlessly. They're just absolutely wonderful inks in my opinion. Okay, so there we have our panel. I'm just quickly putting the foam applicators away on my ink pads before I make a mess. Okay, and we are done with those colors. Now I'm going to take my Distress sprayer here and I'm going to give this some spritzing. Just holding it about, oh, I don't know, maybe a foot or so above my paper, giving it some spritzing. What's great about the Distress sprayer is if you only pull it about 3/4 of the way down, you get really nice droplets as opposed to the spray. So I kind of mix it up a little bit. So I have some droplets, as you can see, as they're reacting with that oxide ink, and then some of the spray as well. And the idea is to kind of make this look like snow coming down a little bit. It's just a different, you know, unique way. You could also, there's so many ways you could do this background. You could do emboss resist, where you put down some snow flakes from a stamp with white embossing powder and then ink over it. You can use stenciling for the snow. You can do whatever you want, but this was just a very easy way for me to do it. It didn't take a lot of effort and still had a really neat result. All right. So now you can see that that is kind of what the background is going to look like. And now I'm going to take some shimmer spray. This just happens to have come in a Hero Arts kit that this was the Starry Night Sky kit that I did a fairly lengthy video on last month or so. But you can, there's tons of shimmer sprays out there. You could also just omit this part if you want. You could do some painting, you know, just by flicking a paintbrush on to get a little bit of glimmer, whatever you want to do, or just eliminate this stuff. It's not mandatory at all. It's just kind of a fun. Now, I know that most of this is going to be covered, and there's not a whole lot of glimmer spray in this bottle, so I'm trying to save it. So I'm just going to put a little tiny bit up here at the top where it's going to show. So I'm just going to give this a spray. There we go. Find my lid here. All right, and then I'm gonna do the same thing and grab this paper towel and just blot this dry. And then I'm gonna bring this up to the camera so you can really see the gorgeousness that comes from using this beautiful shimmer spray. Can you see that there up top? It's still a little wet, but oh, look at that shimmer and shine. It is so beautiful. So I'm gonna set this aside to dry, and I'm going to grab one that I've already done that also has that shimmer spray, just to show you one more time how you can kind of lay this out. So of course we have our mountains, we have our tree line, and then our little hills down here at the bottom. And I just used regular adhesive to adhere all of this together, and then of course any excess you just trim off. And then there you have your card base. Now let me show you quickly what I did with the trees, because as you can see in the finished card, I have green inking on the trees, and I just did distress inking for that as well. What I did is I used Distress Oxide Lucky Clover ink, and actually, you know what? I did not. I think I used Mowed Lawn, and that's not available in the oxides yet. I apologize for that, guys. I'm working on too many projects at once here. I used Mowed Lawn. Okay, so this is just regular distress ink because it's not available in the oxides yet. So what I did here is, and I again used watercolor paper because I'm going to spritz this, but you have to be careful because these are so fine, these little cutouts from the Lawn Fawn die. So I just kind of blotted it off on my scratch paper first, then kind of came in very gently and just inked over. And remember, it's okay if you get, for this particular design, it's okay if you get ink down here because I'm covering it up with the hillsides. If, however, you wanted this to not be green down here, you were using this piece, in other words, just take some Post-it note tape and run it around, you know, down here, and that will block off any ink from getting onto this. Again, for the purposes of this card, I didn't care because I'm covering it up. So as you can see, some trees are more shaded than others. That's on purpose to give kind of a little dimensional look with some shading. I'm going to put my ink back really quickly here, and then I'm going to give this, whoops, I'm going to give this just a simple spritz as well, with that same distress sprayer. Just give it a little bit of a spritz. And it's a very subtle look with the spritzing there, but it's really, really pretty. It just kind of adds to the design of the card. There we go. And then finally, and let me just, before I move on to the final step, you can see a little bit there of that distressing on the trees. Again, it's very subtle, but you can definitely see it in person, and it does add kind of a little bit of a finesse to the project. Finally, for the little hillsides, I did the tiniest little bit of inking, and I just used some tumbled glass, which is a very light blue ink. This also is just available in regular distress ink right now, which is perfectly fine. The distress inks are lovely. And all I did was just come down and I just did the tippy tops of these little mountain hillsides, just to give them a tiny little bit of color. Do the other one very quickly here as well. All right, and that's it. Very, very light inking. It's going to be, again, one of those very subtle looks, but that way it's not quite so stark white, if that makes sense, and it just kind of gives it a little bit of shading, which of course I always like to do on my projects. So putting this all together again here, this is what you would have at the end. So see, this is going to cover up that green that came down there. no problem at all. It's going to cover it up completely. And then this one comes down here like so. And then, like I said, you would trim off any excess, and there's your scene. And I just think it's really, really cute and a perfect kind of little homey scene for our little critters and our Yeti in our little village to live. So, all right. So that's it for the scene building. And here again is the finished card. And let me just pull this up really quick so hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. See there on the little green trees? I know it's hard to see on camera, but you can, if you look very carefully, you can see a little bit of that distressing that I was talking about. It just kind of, again, it just kind of finishes up the look. It makes it look, you know, just a little bit more polished and finished and cute. The final thing that I wanted to do today, there's a lot of elements here, so I'm not going to color everything. I will have a link to my blog in the description box below of this video. And on my blog, I will have a list of every single Zig marker that I used for every image that you see here. But I didn't want to bore you and take up too much of your time coloring absolutely everything. So head to my blog for the marker color names if you're interested. I'm going to color these two little guys for you today, one little girl and one little boy, just to show you how you really can watercolor paint these teeny tiny images. So what I've done is I've already stamped them with my favorite Hero Arts black dye ink, which is great for watercoloring, onto some Canson XL watercolor paper. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit here so we can really see the coloring. All right, now for the little girl, I'm going to start with her hair. I'm using Zig Markers and of course my detailer water brush, which I use for everything. It's a great water brush though, in all seriousness. It really lets you get, it has a fine tip and it really lets you get into these small spaces. And as you can see, these images are teeny tiny. When they have teeny tiny images like this, you really have to be very light with your marker. All right, so I'm going to use dark brown and brown on her hair. And as always, I put the dark color down first. And in this case, it's the dark brown. So I'm just going to put a little bit right there and right here at the end. And I'm just working in sections, so I'm just doing the area of hair under her little hat first. Now I'm going to come in with the brown and a tiniest little bit, as you can see there, just the tiniest little bit of marker. And then I'm going to blend that out. And you get a cute little blend there. See, you really can do this coloring on teeny tiny images. For the little ponytail that hangs down, part of the first little pigtail, I'm just going to put a little bit of ink at the top. Because it's so tiny, I'm not going to get any shading at all if I put color at the top and the bottom and then try to, you know, fill in the middle. It's not going to work because it's such a tiny little image. So when their images are this tiny, I really don't worry too much about light source. I mean, I do to an extent, but I really focus more on just shadowing and having light places, as you can see here, juxtaposed with the darker spaces, just so the image looks pops, you know what I mean, and has a little bit more depth to it. I still worry a little bit about light source. For example, the little girl's facing to the left, so the light's clearly coming this way, and so of course this side of her hat here is going to be darker, the bottom of her hat. So I use pale rose for her hat, and I'm just going to blend this. And beautiful, very light blending, but you still get it. You still get that blending, which is great. I'm going to come down to her little jacket now, and I'm going to use pale rose for that as well. And again, when you see me do bigger images, I put a lot more marker down. But for these tiny images, I'm putting just the tiniest little bit of marker down, and I'm saving it for the places where the shadow or the shading is going to be, based on where I have that light source coming from. And there you go. Very, very pretty. Now, the pale rose is light, so it might not show up great on camera. Let me pull it up there. But there's definite shading in real life, in person here. Now, for her jeans, I used cornflower blue. I can't remember what it was called. And again, very light with the marker. All right. For her little shoes, I used black. I'm sorry, I grabbed the wrong color there. Actually, I used gray. No, I used black. I'm sorry, guys. I did use black on her shoe. Again, I have so many projects I'm working on for this crafting weekend here that I'm getting my project's confused on which colors that I used. All right, so again, very, very light on the black, and then just blend it out. All right, now for the stripe on her hat, I'm gonna come back up to that and use peacock blue. Now notice, the hat has two different colors that I want on it. I want the stripe blue and I wanted the hat pink. I waited, I came down here and did the jacket and the pants. Why did I do that? Because if I color that pale rose hat and then go right in with the blue, it might bleed because the pink is still wet. Ask me how I know that, right? I've had that happen to me many times before. So if you just wait a second, just go color something else on the image. You don't have to wait, minutes, just a little tiny bit. But you do want to wait because otherwise you're going to get some bleeding into the place that's still wet if you don't wait. All right. And so for that little stripe on her hat, I use peacock blue. Now for her cute little scarf, I'm going to use red. Again, just be very light on the marker. That is the secret to these tiny little images. Just show shading. If you want to show some shading and depth to your image, just go very light on the marker that you lay down. Finally, it's time for some skin tones. I'm going to use blush and flesh color. I'm going to put the blush down first because it's the darkest, and this side of her face here is going to certainly be darkest. And then I'm going to mix that with the flesh color and then pull that out into the remainder of the white space. For her hand, I'm not even going to bother with the water. I'm just going to mix the flesh color and the blush together. And then I'm going to take some sugared almond pink and put a tiny little bit of blush on her cheeks. Her cheek. Well, this cheek's showing too. We'll put a little tiny bit there. And she's finished. And that was so easy. The trick, in my opinion, is put a little tiny bit of marker down and use a fine tipped. If you're using a paintbrush with water, use a very fine paintbrush like this one that has a really thin tip there, or a water brush with a very fine tip. And that's how you do this. It's so easy. So let me do the little boy super quick, and then that will be it for this video. I'm using peacock blue for his hat. So again, I'm going to put it on this side now because he's facing the other way. So I'm kind of having the light source hit him at a different angle here. And I'm just pulling that blue marker out. Very pretty. Very, very pretty. And I'm going to use that same peacock blue for his coat. I kept the colors pretty simple for this card. Pinks and blues and lots of blues and reds to give it kind of a holiday feel. And I use a lot of the same colors. For example, the hat and the jacket and a lot of my little people images are the same colors and that kind of thing. For his pants, I use brown. So I'm just going to lay just a little tiny bit of color down. Just a littlest bit. Pull that out. Now I used the same red for his little scarf. See how tiny little bit of marker I'm laying down? I can't stress that enough. Tiny bit, because if you put too much marker, it's still going to look fine, but you're not going to have the shading. You're not going to have the distinguishing of colors. I'm going, from light to dark, which is really what gives it a three-dimensional kind of look, which makes your image pop. All right, for his hair, I'm using light brown and yellow. So I'm putting this the tiniest little bit of light brown down, which is my darkest color, coming in with the yellow, and then we will blend that out. Cute. I'm using black for his shoes. Again, putting just the faintest little bit of color down. All right, let's do the stripe on his hat, and I did use green for that, just to give a little bit more color to the palette. Okay, and then finally we just have to do his skin tone again. So the same skin tone as the little girl, blush, which I'm going to put over here, flesh color, same with his little hand. Again, the hand is so tiny I didn't mess with the water on the hand. And then we'll blend this out on his cute little face, and then we'll do some sugared almond pink for the cheeks. Tiny little dots of that pink. I just realized I missed the little top of his hat, and that's going to drive me crazy. So I'll put a little tiny bit of color down there and pull it out. There you go. And that is it, guys. I'll tell you, I was worried I wasn't going to be able to watercolor these images because they are so tiny, but you can do it. You absolutely can do it, and you get really beautiful results. All right, so that's it for this card, guys. Let me pull this out and just show you the final card one more time. I cannot say enough good things about this adorable stamp set here. So definitely check out this new Mama Elephant release. It is so beautiful. Here is the background that we created on camera. It's dry now, so you can see that beautiful spritz spray at the top, which will show once we have our scene put together. I spritzed a little more on the card I did today than I did on the finished card here because I really couldn't see it as much. Just a little bit up here. So that one has a lot more. Just use however much you want. And then build your little scene. And then the funnest part is adding these cute little, this cute little town when you're all finished. Thank you guys so much for crafting with me today. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks. Bye-bye.